People assume they know what you carry. They see you functioning, and they decide you're fine. You've never corrected them. There's something in you, and I want to describe it carefully because it's specific. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from performing okayness for so long that you've almost started to believe it yourself. Almost. I keep getting this sense of someone who moves through their life competently, reliably, who shows up, who handles things, and who, behind all of that, is quietly waiting for a moment they can't quite articulate. Not necessarily a dramatic change, more like a moment of permission. Permission to put some of it down. What I'm noticing is that you're not someone who asks for help easily, not because you're too proud, that's not quite it. It's something more like you don't want to be a burden, yes, but there's also this deeper thing underneath that. You genuinely aren't sure people would know how to hold what you're actually carrying. So you curate what you share. You give people the version of you they can handle. That's not dishonesty. I want to be clear about that. That's wisdom that came from somewhere real. Something happened, maybe not one thing, maybe a slow accumulation of things where you learned that your full emotional weight made people uncomfortable. They didn't say that directly, but you read the room. You're good at reading rooms. And so you adapted. You became the person who could talk about their struggles without actually asking for anything. The one who processes out loud but doesn't need to be saved. The one who seems introspective but stays self sufficient. And people loved you for it. They called you strong. They called you easy to be around. What I'm getting very clearly is that you received those compliments and something in you didn't know whether to feel proud or profoundly lonely. Wait, actually, I want to stay here for a second because this feels important. You're not someone who resents people for not seeing you. That's not quite your emotional pattern. It's more quiet than resentment. It's more like a low grade resignation, a place inside you that decided a long time ago that being fully known is a kind of luxury not everyone gets. And you made peace with that, or you made something that resembles peace with that. What I'm noticing is that underneath your composure, there's someone who still hopes they're wrong about that quietly, without making a big deal out of it. There's still a part of you that watches certain interactions, certain moments of connection, and thinks, maybe this time, maybe this person is different. Maybe I don't have to translate myself as much here. That hope is not naive. I think it's one of the most honest things about you. There's something about your relationship with overthinking that I want to name carefully because you've probably already labeled it as a flaw. I'm not sure it is. What looks like overthinking from the outside is actually something more like hypervigilance, a very developed sensitivity to nuance, to subtext, to the gap between what people say and what they mean. You notice things, you notice them fast, and then you spend time with them long after other people have moved on. That costs you. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. There are nights where your mind won't settle, where you're replaying a conversation or a look or a silence, trying to decode what was actually communicated. And the frustrating thing is that your instincts are usually right, which makes it harder to dismiss. You can't fully trust yourself to stop doing it because doing it has protected you. That's not a flaw, that's a system, an exhausting one, but a system that was built for a reason. There's something about how you experience intimacy that keeps coming through. And I want to describe this carefully because it's subtle. You can be warm. You are warm, people who know you feel that, but there's a layer of closeness you hold back. Not the surface warmth, not the care, not the loyalty, something more interior than that. And I keep getting the sense that you don't withhold it deliberately. It's more that you haven't yet met someone who made you feel safe enough to stop monitoring yourself around them. Because here's what I think is actually happening. The version of you that most people experience is already a generous, open version of you. You give a lot. You think deeply about others. You check in. You remember things that matter to people. But there's a quieter self underneath all of that. One who has opinions she keeps to herself. One who has dreams she hasn't shared. One who gets hurt more easily than she lets on, and who heals slowly even when she pretends otherwise. That self is not hidden because she's ashamed. She's hidden because she's been the one thing you've managed to keep truly yours. And no, that's not fully healthy. I'm not going to romanticize it, but I do think it makes sense. And I think understanding that it makes sense is more useful than trying to fix it before you're ready. What keeps coming through is a word I keep circling back to, and the word is tired. Not hopeless, not broken, tired. Tired in that specific way where you still want things, still care about things, still have capacity, but there's this accumulated weight that makes every new endeavor feel heavier than it should. You do the thing, and then you need more recovery time than you used to. You engage with people, and then you need to withdraw for a while. You have good days, and then something small topples them, and you feel disproportionately affected by it. And then you feel embarrassed about feeling disproportionately affected, and then you're managing two emotional experiences at once. That loop. I think you know that loop. What I want to say about that loop is that it's not a character flaw. It's what happens when someone has been carrying weight that was never entirely theirs to carry and has been doing it long enough that it's become normalized. It's become your baseline. You've stopped noticing how heavy it actually is because you can't remember what light felt like. There's a shift I want to move toward now. Not to rush this, nothing about this reading is rushing, but something is changing in your external world. It feels as though something or someone is entering a different phase with you. I don't think this is dramatic or sudden. It wouldn't surprise me if you almost missed it. But there's something in your immediate environment, a relationship, a situation, maybe a person you've known for a while, where the dynamic is quietly recalibrating. What I keep getting the impression of is someone seeing you more clearly than they have before, not because you showed them more, because they're paying more attention. And it's the kind of attention that's hard to explain. It's not intrusive. It doesn't feel like being watched. It feels more like being considered, like someone is holding the thought of you in a gentler way than you're used to. There seems to be something unspoken between you and someone specific, a conversation that hasn't happened yet. Not because there's conflict, it doesn't feel like conflict. It feels more like a moment of real honesty that both of you sense is coming, but neither of you has quite moved toward yet. I want to be careful not to tell you who this is. I think you already have a sense. What I'm noticing is that this potential, whatever it is, whether it's a deepening connection, a new beginning, or a conversation that changes the shape of something, you're almost afraid to want it. Because wanting things and then not getting them is something you've made yourself very practiced at surviving. And survival has made you cautious, not closed, cautious. But I keep getting the impression that caution here might cost you something. Not because you should throw open every door you shouldn't, but because this particular thing seems to be approaching you, not the other way around. And all it might require from you is to not retreat, to stay present, to allow yourself to be found without immediately offering a version of yourself that's easier to receive. That last part feels important. The version of yourself that's easier to receive is not the version of yourself that will build something real. And somewhere inside you, I think you know that. I think that's one of the quieter frustrations, the awareness that your instinct to self protect sometimes removes you from the very things you want. There's something else that keeps coming through, and I want to name it plainly. You are someone who gives a great deal and finds it genuinely difficult to receive. Not impossible, difficult. There's a specific discomfort you feel when people do something kind for you, especially when you didn't ask, a kind of almost embarrassed gratitude, a quick desire to reciprocate, to equalize, to not be in the position of someone who was helped, because being helped means being seen as someone who needed it, and you've spent so long not needing things publicly that receiving has become its own kind of vulnerability. What keeps coming through is that this might be something to sit with, not to force yourself to be different, but to notice when you deflect care, to notice the exact moment you minimize what someone is offering you, and to ask yourself quietly, without judgment, why. Because you deserve to receive, not in a generic affirmational way, in a specific, real, honest way. You do things for people without being asked. You hold things for people without being acknowledged. You're someone who shows up quietly and leaves very little evidence of the effort involved. You deserve someone who does some version of that for you. And I think it's coming. It looks like it's already beginning, actually, not as a grand arrival, more like a slow, honest accumulation of small moments where someone chooses you again and again until you finally stop being surprised by it. I want to end here with something that might feel uncomfortable, and I say it with care. You are not a finished project. You're not done healing, not done growing, not done making sense of things. And for someone who handles things as well as you do, for someone who has figured out a lot, that incompleteness can feel quietly shameful. Like there's a version of you that should be further along by now. But incompleteness is not failure. It's not a sign that your growth isn't real. What I keep getting is that you've changed far more than you've given yourself credit for. The things that used to break you, that used to stop you, you've found ways to move through them. Not cleanly, not without cost, but you're still here, still curious, still somewhere underneath everything, hoping. That hope is not foolish, it's not naive. It is, I think, the most accurate read you have of your own life. That something is possible, that it hasn't all been accounted for yet. I think you're closer to something good than you know, not as a reward, not because you've earned it through suffering, though you've had your share of that, just because this is the direction things seem to be moving. Slowly, honestly, in a way that might not announce itself. Stay close to what's quiet and true about you. That's where this is going to happen. If something in this landed for you, if it touched something you've been carrying privately, I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me what resonated, even just a word or a sentence. It helps more than you know.